Today is October 25th, 2016, and I am interviewing Dawn White at Tremont Ridge in Hillsboro. Dawn is 78 years old, having been born on December 20th, 1937. Dawn, would you please state for the recording in what time period you served and the branch of service that you served in?
I was in the Air Force, went in 57, got out in 61. I was in the physical therapy. I was in San Antonio for a year. Part of it was basic training, and I think 11 months training for physical therapy. Then I went to Perrin Air Force Base in Denison, Texas, and stayed there the rest of my time.
Okay. All right. Well, could you, before we get more detail about that, would you please tell us a little bit about where you were born and your parents and your family?
Well, I was born in, I lived in Irving, Illinois, but I was born in Hillsboro Hospital. My mother's name was Zelma. My father's name was Wilbur. We lived in Irving on the farm. And
And did you have any siblings?
I had two brothers, Dale and Jim. They were 8 and 9 years older than me. And
Okay. And did any of your other family join the service?
yeah, we were in all branches. Dale was in the Navy, Jim was in the Army, and I was in the Air Force.
Okay. And what was your occupation, or what were you doing before you entered the service?
Well, I got out of high school and I went to Bradley University for a year on a football scholarship. And I come home after that year and got a job at Eagle Pitcher Industries, and didn't go back to school. I stayed there for I think about 10 years. Then I went to work on the farm in a partnership with my brother Dale, and done that till I retired.
Okay. So, did you enlist in the Army, or in the Air Force?
Yeah,
or
I enlisted in the Air Force, yeah.
And how old were you when you enlisted?
I think 19. I'd have to figure it out, but I think it was 19.
That's right. So, so you enlisted, and where then did you go for basic training?
Went to basic training in San Antonio, Texas.
All right.
Then I went to Sherman and Denison, Texas, Perrin Air Force Base,
Okay.
for the rest of my enlistment.
Okay. So during basic training, do you remember those first few days of basic training, what it was like? And I'm sure it was a big difference from what you were used to. And how were you feeling those first few days?
Well, it didn't bother me, but it was a big change from the life that I was used to.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't used to living with 30 other people in the same room.
Sure. That is a lot. Do you remember any memorable instructors while you were in basic training? Anybody that sticks out?
Well, I remember one, but I can't think of his name. But he was a staff sergeant when I was in basic training, and he was a very good instructor.
And did that help as you were going through basic to have someone that was?
Yeah, it was a big help. If you had any problems, he could most of the time help you get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay. Did you have any, as you were finishing basic training, did you go on to, well, you went on to specialized training.
yeah,
Yes.
I went on
Tell me
to
about that.
physical therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and that was an Army base.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only the only physical therapy school in the military at that time. It's all kind of those Navy people and Army and Air Force all worked and all at the same school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in more or less downtown San Antonio. You went downtown Main Street of San Antonio, and when you got to the north end of it, there was the Army base right there in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And might as well say it was pretty convenient. If you wanted anything, you was right in the middle of downtown.
Uh-huh. And what were some experiences you had during your training?
Well, about the only one that really stands out to me that I saved one little girl's arm. In physical therapy, I don't know whether you ever heard of a diathermy machine, but they were a deep heating machine.
Mm-hmm.
And well, before I got out of the service, they were discontinued, and they weren't, well, they just were too dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And but this little girl, I didn't know it at the time, but the first thing I ask all my patients, do you have any metal in your body? And she had a broken arm and had some pins in her arm. And if I would have went ahead with what the doctor wanted me to do, I would have more or less burned her arm, because that diathermy machine, the heat goes directly to, if there's metal in any place, goes directly to that metal and heats it. It don't do the heat anything else but that metal, and it would have burned her internally. Terrible. Really, I can't say myself what would have happened because I don't know, but I did know that it would burn her, because it would go right to that metal. And other than that, it was just routine work. People would come in and get heat treatments, and massages, and things like that. I really enjoyed it. I tried to stay in it after I got out of the military. I tried to stay in therapy and got to investigating possible jobs. And the only two places, of course, therapy at that time wasn't a real big thing like it is today. And the only two places I could have went was Chicago and Denver, Colorado. And I really didn't want to go to either one of them. I wanted a smaller community. So I went home and went on the farm and got in a partnership with my brother, and done that the rest of my life.
So you, when you were, you'd had your training and you served, how long did you work in that field while you were in the Air Force?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And tell me again where you were at for those 3 years.
I went to San Antonio a year for
The
training. Then my permanent base was Perrin Air Force Base, and it was right between Sherman and Denison, Texas.
Okay. All right. And did you make, I'm sure you made friends, but did you have any lifelong friends that you made while you were in the Air Force?
Well, none locally, but I visited several times after I got out with one fellow and his wife, Vernon Pippin, and he was from Quinlan, Texas, and that's only about 30 miles from where we were stationed. And weekends, that's where I stayed, was in Quinlan. And then another one, what was his name? Raymond. Can't say his last name, but he was on base in the what department was that? In supply. If you needed anything, you went to him for the materials that you needed, and if you didn't have it, he'd order it for you and get it for you. Visited with him a lot after I got out of the service. He lived in a little town just north of where we were stationed.
So what did you do for recreation, and what were your interests outside of your therapy work while you were in the service?
Not good. I'll tell you the truth, I drank a lot. Main thing was if you got off base, you headed for Dallas. That was only about 30 or 40 miles away, and there was a lot of things going on in Dallas, and that's where I spent a lot of time. In fact, that's where I met my wife, was Dallas.
Okay, so when you were When you were during the time you were doing your physical therapy position, tell me a little bit about your where you stayed, and did you enjoy the food that the Air Force served you and that type of thing?
Well, I stayed in the barracks and on the base in the Air Force till I got married, and then I moved off base. But it was completely different life than what I was used to, but really I wouldn't change it for anything.
And how was it different?
Say, how was it different?
How was it different, yes.
Oh, my goodness, from a farm boy to being in the Air Force, it was a big change in life. And I don't know whether it was better or worse, or it was just something that you had to endure, because it was either get drafted in the Army or do something else you thought you might like. And
so that you felt like the Air Force offered you the best options?
Yeah, I figured it was better than the Army, marching all the time, and
Well, do you feel like there are lessons that you learned while you were in the military that you're able now to, as you've gone through your life, that you've used to kind of base your thinking on?
well, I really can't think of anything that would pertain to that, really.
So your service ended, and you said you came back to Illinois and went into farming with your brother.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I mean, is it something that you really, really enjoyed? And
I really enjoyed it, yeah. We grew corn, soybeans, and wheat, and I can't remember now exactly how many acres we farmed. It was 500 or 600 acres, but it kept you busy, and it was something I enjoyed. You put it in the ground and watch it grow.
And you worked with your brother.
Yeah,
So.
worked with my brother Dale. Yeah, and well, for first 8 or 10 years, I worked just part-time at the farm, and I worked at Eagle Pitcher, full-time job, and my dad worked at the farm then too, the three of us. But like I say, I just put in part-time, they were full-time. And then when I quit Eagle Pitcher and my dad quit the farm, he completely retired. But I worked there for 20 years.
And did you have any family that's followed you into farming?
No, I had 3 girls and a boy, and the boy ended up, he's a preacher, and the girls all live on the farm, and my son-in-law, my youngest girl, he's the one that took over all the farming. He farmed with me for 6 or 8 years before I retired, and then he took over the farm. And I still own the farm, but he farms it. And,
passing it down to the generations.
pardon?
Passing it down to the generations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When you came back home, going back just a little bit, but when you came back home, did you find it an easy transition, or was it a little difficult switching from Air Force life back to civilian life?
No, I don't think there was too much of a drastic change, because I knew exactly where I was going when I got out of the Air Force. And I'd lived that life before, so really the change wasn't that bad.
Okay. Have you joined any or been a part of any like veterans organizations?
No.
No? All right. Were there any reunions with your former folks that you served with? Have there been any reunions or anything like that you've attended?
No, there hasn't been any.
Okay. All right. And you said you remained in contact for a little while with a couple of fellas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one, I still kind of keep in contact with, because his wife and my wife were cousins.
Oh, okay.
And my wife has passed away, but I still talk to them every once in a while, because I was in service with him. He was in same barracks I was in when I first started.
Okay. Do you think when you were in the military, did that experience influence your thinking of war or the military in general?
Really, I never thought anything about it being in war, because, well, working in physical therapy, you just didn't think about being being in the war.
Sure.
And it wasn't that if I was out shooting the gun out on the range all the time. And
so I know you served during peacetime, and you had, you had specific jobs and you did your duty and that, but do you ever think about how different it might have been had you joined maybe a few years later when Vietnam was starting?
Oh, I really never thought about being in the wartime. Don't think I'd have liked it, but that's something, if you're in that time, there's nothing you can do about it but serve it.
Sure. Okay. Well, is there anything that you might like to share with, say, future generations that might see or hear your recorded interview. Just anything about, it could be life in general or duty to serve.
Yeah. Really, I haven't got much to say other than I really enjoyed the physical therapy in the military. I would recommend that for anybody if they wanted to go into some kind of training. And
do you feel like in your line of work, when you were in physical therapy, what kind of I guess, do you feel like you being a people person would have been more helpful, or in that line of work, or did that not really matter?
I felt like I was doing a service to the people that were injured or had problems, and physical therapy could help. Well, I tell you, the best what I liked to work with was the children, because you could really see more improvement in them than you did the older people. And they were an enjoyment to work with. And well, really, where you could really see the people improving made you think you were doing something worthwhile. And
are there people that you saw often enough that you formed somewhat of a bond with, because you saw them so often, or maybe they more formed a bond with you? But were there any situations like that where you felt like it just something clicked? And
there was one lady that I worked with in the hospital, and after I got married, I rented a house from her, and she was more or less my second mother.
oh. And can you think of any others that were maybe memorable that you worked with? Any other folks?
Well, there's several of them that I remember and would associate with if they were a little closer, but all of them live in Texas and I live in Illinois, and I've lost contact with them. But
and what was it that made them special or drew you to them?
no, I don't know of anything special. They were just friends when I was there, and
All right. One more question. Have you used military benefits since you've been out of the military?
no, I have not used anything.
Okay.
Tell you the truth, I don't know what even would be available for me. So I haven't tried to use any benefits.
Okay. Well, Dale, or Don, I'm sorry, Dale was your brother. I just interviewed him. Don, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with me and chat about your military experience. I really appreciate your time, and I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Yeah.